Construction Nation. Welcome to Lead with Trust. I'm Sue Dyer, and I've been on a 3-decade journey to figure out how to make sure our construction projects succeed and produce some extraordinary results. My trusted leader journey has led me to work on over 4,000 construction projects worth over $180 billion. In this podcast, I'm here to teach you everything I've learned. One thing I know is that it starts with the leaders of the businesses and organizations that come together to build a project. If that's you, let's get going. Hi, Construction Nation. This is episode 45, and I am hoping that you love podcasts as much as I do. But I know many people in the industry are not all that familiar with it. So that's what this episode is about. So as I said, I really love podcasts, probably because I love to learn and keep up with the trends. And I like to know what's leading edge. And I find podcasts to absolutely be the perfect way to accomplish this. First, they're audio. So I can listen while I walk or drive, exercise, do the dishes, vacuum, pull weeds in the backyard. I could do it while I'm doing something else. And I really love that. Second, they are free. Third, you get direct access to learn from some of the top industry leaders and experts right in your ears. What is not to love about that? I listen to about 17 different podcasts each week. All of them are business related, and I have learned so many things from my podcasts. I really think they're a fantastic phenomenon that I hope all of you will take advantage of, learning how to become even better leaders, business owners, how to hire great people and keep them, understanding what's happening all over the United States and the world. You can really learn anything you need to know. And all this knowledge is being produced for you and laid at your feet, well, maybe your ears. And did I mention it's all free? I just can't hardly believe it sometimes. For construction in 2022, about 50% of construction folks are listening to at least one podcast. And most people listen to between 5 and 7 different podcasts. But I still ask people in the industry, and I get asked all the time, what is a podcast? How do I listen to a podcast? So I thought I would start this episode with a bit of history and how to access podcasts. So here we go. What is a podcast? It is an audio file, a WAV file that has been put onto the internet. So listeners then can download that file into their device, like your phone. Most people, it's your phone. It could be an iPad. It could be a computer, some kind of way to listen to it through an app. And there are a lot of different apps. And most of the podcasts are episodes that are a series. Some of them are a long series, an ongoing series, but they're always a series of episodes. Some people do a season, which might have like 10 episodes. Some people might do a weekly. Some people do bi-weekly. Some people do daily. There's a lot of different ways that different podcasts operate. And some people have very short, like less than 5 minutes. And some, I know one my husband listens to is like 2 hours long. And he listens to every single minute of it. So there's, Apple Podcasts or Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can listen to podcasts on Audible and Stitcher, and there's just many, many other places that you can listen. So and of course, you can listen on any smart device, including, some of the audio ones like Alexa. You can also now even listen on some of the modern gaming devices or even your smart TVs. So the odds are that if the device has a speaker or a headphone jack, you can listen to a podcast on it. Your phone likely has a podcast app that it came with, like Apple Podcasts. It's built in, it's a little purple icon. But you can listen to podcasts many places. And what I really love about the podcast is that there is a whole distribution system that publishes the podcast each week to all of the different podcast outlets. So once you publish it, it's everywhere and it stays there. So we'll have people that will come back and they like the podcast. So they start with episode 1 and we may be on episode, 50 or 300, and yet they can listen to all of them. So there's many, many things to love about a podcast. So I've also been asked, like, well, how many podcasts are there? And in 2022, there's currently 2.2 million podcasts out there worldwide. But only 156,000 of them have a weekly episode or more. And in the United States, there's 700,000 podcasts. So there's a lot of podcasts that have been started and stopped or not continuing, like they were a series or they were for a particular event or something. And they're still there and still available, but they're not creating new episodes. Podcasting is growing, and I predict it will continue to grow as part of this new educational transformation that is really occurring worldwide. People have access to information and education that has never been the case before. And this is top information from top experts that you wouldn't even have access to. And so the education that used to be reserved for only the maybe really, really high-end people or people that had the money to do it, all those resources now you have direct access to through podcasts. And so I think it's a phenomenon that you should at least check out, especially if you really like to learn. And there are so many different things to choose from that I know you can find some things that you will just love to learn. And so let's get started. So the first step would be for you to get plugged in. And so, so check to see if you already have a podcast app on your smartphone. If not, you can download one. And I mentioned several of them. There's Apple Podcasts, which is most podcasts. Spotify is growing. Google has a lot of podcasts. If you already listen to audiobooks, you can jump in there on Audible. And there's Stitcher, which is a pretty well-known one. And there's many, many other ones as well. But get yourself an app on your phone. Most phones already came with one. If you have a Google phone, you have the Google app. And if you have an Apple phone, you have the Apple app. So get that. Make sure you see it. You know what it is. Make sure it's working. And so once you have the app installed, then you can go out on that app and you can search for all the published podcasts. You can put in by topic. You can put in by author. You can put in by an area of interest. And find your favorite and subscribe to them. And subscribing is just clicking the little button that means you're going to get it. Every single episode that comes will automatically come into your phone. And then you will have it. And you can decide whether or not that episode's one you want to listen to or not. But subscribing is a great way to not try to remember what podcast was it. And then it sits in your library. Also, you just never miss an episode. The other thing I love about it is that you can share an episode quite easily by just clicking a little thing and little dots, and you say share this episode, and you can share it with anybody you want. which I think is totally awesome. The other thing I love is that you can save your favorite episodes, so that if there's something that like really strikes your fancy, you think this is profound, I'm going to use this somewhere, I want to save it for later, you can save it as well. So all these things you can do as you get plugged into podcasts. So I thought that it would be very interesting to curate a list for all of you on what I see as the top 10 podcasts for construction leaders in 2022. And so that it would make your searching much easier and your learning much faster. And these podcasts are all ones I think have something important to offer to the industry and to you specifically, even though some of them may be rather specific. But I still think they're worth a listen. So let me just go through the top 10. Ta-da. Hope you're enjoying this show. Every time you and your team step foot onto a construction project, you bring your business culture with you. For any construction project to succeed, there must be a high trust culture. It doesn't matter if you're in planning, design, construction, or startup phases. The more trust you bring and build, the better your results. I've created a free resource for you, the Trusted Leader Profile, so you can know exactly the level of trust you bring to your business and projects and what you can do to boost trust. You can grab that at sudico.com/profile. That's sudyco.com/profile, PROFILE. And I hope that you'll remember that always high trust equals high performance, and it really depends on you. Now, back to the show. Ta-da, drum roll. Top 10 podcasts for construction leaders in 2022 are. And the first one, well, I had to say my podcast because it launched in January of 2022 at number 36 on iTunes for all business management. So that was pretty exciting. And it is the only podcast specifically about leadership for construction leaders. So since this is a podcast list for construction leaders, I stuck it in there as number one. Yeah, I'm a bit biased. But each of my solo episodes, I try to create like a little mini training, and I curate that to help you learn what works and what doesn't work, what I've learned, how to create and lead a high trust, high performing construction business and projects. The interviews that I do are with some of the most interesting leaders who range from a leader of a university trust laboratory, best-selling authors on trust, seasoned construction leaders on sharing their success and challenges, as well as just some maybe even field folks who have like a really unique perspective or invented something. So the podcast is curated to help you learn more about becoming a trusted leader. I mean, that is the overall focus. And my objective for the podcast is to give back to the industry by openly sharing the insights and lessons that I've learned over the past 30 years. That's just kind of where I'm at in my life. So who is this podcast for? This podcast is for public and private facility owners, general contractors, builders, subcontractors, construction managers, architects, engineers, design subconsultants, material suppliers, equipment suppliers, technology suppliers, and really any business that serves the construction industry, because we need the paradigm of trust for us to become high performing. Okay, so number 2 is Inside the Castle. This podcast is produced inside the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers headquarters to share openly their commitment to learning and being a trusting organization with their employees worldwide. If you work with or want to work with the Army Corps of Engineers, then this podcast really is a must for you. I also think that many of the things that they're doing right now at the Corps is pretty leading edge, especially for federal government agencies. This podcast will offer insights really into the inner workings also of the Army Corps of Engineers. So who's it for? Contractors, builders, construction managers, designers who are or want to work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. It is also for facility owners who might want to learn what the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is doing and how they're operating. Because they're, like I said, they're doing some pretty cool things. Number 3, the Lean Zone. The Lean Zone is a great podcast that covers really a wide variety of construction law topics. Each episode is short, around 15 minutes. And while Alex, the host, is a lawyer and practices law in South Florida, the topics are really pretty darn universal. Alex has a unique perspective as he sees many, many projects. And that when he gets involved, usually it means things are not going so well. And so he has a great way of helping the listeners keep out of trouble or give you advice. And to his audience, he's known as the answer man. So I love that. And so who's this one for? Anyone interested in construction law perspectives and requirements, from the basics, like how do liens work, to leading edge issues like supply chain challenges. Alex is there. Number 4, Bridging the Gap. This podcast is a really great one that focuses on innovation and specifically MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing industry. So many of our buildings have challenges with MEP that this podcast is a great one to keep up with the new innovations that are happening in this area. If you are in the MEP trades, you are going to want to listen to this podcast that looks at technology, different perspectives, and some of the soft skills needed for success. I also like that it offers a perspective of how incredible construction is and champions the fact that construction is a great industry to work in. I know you're going to love this, and I know that it's beyond just MEP. There's topics for everyone here. So who's it for? For sure, MEP contractors and builders and architects who are building and designing MEP systems, and anyone interested in the latest trends and innovations for MEP design and construction. But I think it's also good for everyone who's just interested in the construction industry because it looks at overall topics as well. Number 5, the ENR Critical Path Podcast. Engineering News Records podcast is filled with great information and knowledge, just like the magazine is. But in the podcast, you get to hear the voices behind the news, which really I find interesting and much more telling and insightful. Each week, they deliver interviews of industry experts and decision makers on the latest industry innovations, issues, and developments. I think you're going to get to know the people much more deeply than just reading about it in an article in the magazine. So who's it for? If you subscribe to ENR, you might want to listen to this podcast and keep up on the happenings in the construction industry created by this top magazine. If you don't subscribe, well, it's still there available for you. The ConTech Crew, number 6. This is the podcast for anyone in the industry that wants to keep up with new technology in the industry. Topics range from software, robots, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, construction apps, and more. There is likely nothing that is defining the future of construction today more than the evolution in new technologies and the progress of their applications to real-world construction projects. That's what this podcast can help you keep on top of. Who's it for? Those who want to understand the new technologies and applications and the emerging ones and how they are being used. So you can use them too. Competitive advantage there, guys. Number 7, Design Build Delivers. This show is produced by the Design Build Institute of America, or DBIA, and highlights the design build delivery method or methods, depending on how you define it, by talking with real design build pros. It covers design, construction, how to select team members. There's advice for owners. DBIA is committed to helping to transform the way we deliver infrastructure projects, and we're about to start a whole bunch of those around the country here, and I know around the world. I also know that DBIA has spearheaded the progressive design build that has really taken off and is being used now on most large buildings. So who's it for? Those who are using or want to learn to use the design build delivery method or methods. In the blue is number 8. This podcast is stopped making episodes, but I still think it's worthy to listening to. It is produced by the US CAD Bluebeam software. And that software continues to grow in use across all sectors in the industry. So I think the podcast gives you a nice overview, gives you information and knowledge about all things Bluebeam, especially the Bluebeam Rev, which is the software. I love that it offers solutions to some of the technical problems that you might face, especially when you're just getting started. Bluebeam Rev is still out there and being used. You will learn about new releases, although now it's not really that relevant, but I think that they have conferences, and you'll just learn a lot about the company, which is still very relevant, and about the training, which is still relevant. And there's tools to help you understand what is possible with Bluebeam and how others are using it, which is what I always love. Learning from other people, that's the name of the game. So who's it for? Leaders who want to be more effective in using their Bluebeam for their projects, or those who want to try it, but they need to understand more. Okay, number 9, the Connecting Construction Podcast. This podcast is produced by Trimble, who produces Project Site project management software. But the podcast discusses really a wide variety of topics around project management. And it is a good listen with interesting topics. I really like how they bring in people from different parts of the industry to share how they integrate software into their operations. I think that could be very, very helpful to many, many different companies. Who's it for? Project managers, construction business owners, and others who are interested in project management. And our last podcast on our top 10 list is called Inside Modular. I love to learn about leading edge methods and those that are emerging, and I really believe that modularization is one of these. This podcast is from the Modular Building Institute. So if you're interested in learning what is happening in modular construction, the podcast includes issues, news, and trends, then you will love this podcast. And so who's it for? If you're running a modular business, of course, it's for you. But this trend towards modularization and building off-site and then installing on-site is growing, and you might want to just listen to keep on top of what's happening. Well, there you have it. That's it, Construction Nation. My curated list of the top 10 podcasts for construction leaders in 2022. I hope you will click on one of these in our newsletter. So if you don't get the newsletter and you want to get the newsletter, you can get that at sudyco.com/join, sudyco.com/join. And then you can go to this week's newsletter and grab that, and you'll get this all in a written PDF format. And I also have links in there for every single one of these podcasts. So all you have to do is click on the link and it take you directly to the podcast. And so I think that will make it a lot easier for you. So you can grab that again, the newsletter, by joining with our newsletter, which is at Sudyco, sudyco.com/join. And with that, I really encourage you and hope that you will click on one of these today and find an episode that interests you and listen. I know I used to pay literally thousands of dollars every year to buy books and audio courses. Much of that information today is all free and right in your phone. Wow, what a wonderful world we live in. Well, that's it for this week. In trust to everybody. Take care. Okay, Construction Nation, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Lead with Trust. Will you do me a favor? If you think this episode can help anyone on your team or business, please forward it to them. Please subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And your honest review, hopefully 5 stars, is much appreciated. Every leader who learns how to build their business and projects on a foundation of trust is going to reap the rewards of greater productivity, attracting the best of the best, enjoying your business more, and doing things you thought were impossible. If you want to know where you are in your trusted leader journey, I have a free resource for you. Please just go to sudyco.com/profile, sudyco.com/profile. And you can grab it there and find out where you are on your trusted leader journey. And so that is a wrap for today. Can't wait until I get a chance to hang out with you again next week. And until then, have a great day.